Giving you the information you need. This is Inside the News. Here's Guy, Ben, and Frank.
Welcome back to the second part of Inside the News for this week. And this is the Christmas weekend and a lot going on. Ben Brunson, myself, Guy Wehman, and Frank Vernuccio. Ben, before we turn over to Frank, how you doing down there in the bottom middle?
I'm doing great up here in North Carolina, where I am for the holidays and for the Christmas, and enjoying the weather up here. It's nice and cool, and we love it up here.
I'm teasing him in the bottom middle because if you're watching us on YouTube or AUN, Ben likes it though because we don't have to call it the bottom middle. We call it the foundation that we build the rest of the show on. You like that?
That's right.
All right. And now Frank Vernuccio, he's in the top left. And Frank, we've got to take off on China. Go.
Yeah, a Republican congressional task force has issued a report on China's military, and if you read the details of it, it contradicts a lot of the popular impressions that you seem to get in the media about China. Look, we continue to get this story that China is basically a regional power. The task force report makes it fairly clear that China is becoming a major power that can exert military effect throughout the globe. Whether we're talking about the Indo-Pacific or the Mediterranean, where China now has become a rather significant presence, or any place else in the world, including right here in the Western Hemisphere, the Caribbean in particular, China is becoming a pronounced power with the means to exert influence, both military and civilian. One of the interesting tenets that we've seen this task force report on is China's attitude on battlefield nuclear weapons. You know, a couple of years ago, Vladimir Putin changed the nature of potential warfare in Europe by saying that battlefield nuclear weapons were an acceptable use, that they were essentially just one more weapon like any others. And of course, this saves a lot of money for the nearly bankrupt Russia, because when you use battlefield nuclear weapons, you can eliminate the use of very costly multiple battalions of troops and tanks and all that sort of thing. The Chinese now are adopting that strategy as well. The danger is extant. As China becomes more of a global force around the world, the influence of the United States and its allies is diminishing more and more. It is scary that the media simply doesn't want to talk about this. Almost every report that I think any of us have seen on China talk about the danger from China within the Indo-Pacific, and it ignores the reality that China is now a global threat.
Ben, if we would go back to the 50s and we go back to the 60s, Russia was that threat and communism, and we had to defeat communism. China is a communist country. Period. End of story. You don't have to put it in air quotes or anything. Communism is China. And yet we're not afraid of them and them actually infiltrating, and that's what they're doing, the entire world, Ben.
Well, lots of things to talk about in this segment, but one just quick aside, the statement by Russia, the acceptance of tactical nuclear weapons, is a complete reversal of 40 years ago and a reversal of the military situation. Ronald Reagan talked about using tactical nuclear weapons in Europe. That's why he was so hated in Europe. That's why he was burned in effigy for years. His introduction of the Pershing missile into Europe scared the heck out of the Europeans, but it was a recognition that the Warsaw Pact had conventional force superiority over NATO and could overrun NATO. So it was a deterrent to that conventional force superiority. It's reversed now. The US military would destroy the Russian military. There's no way they could fight us conventionally. So you have a reversal of statements where now the Russians say they would use tactical nukes. It's a deterrent to the US and NATO. All right. The issue of China, though, is the issue. It is our true foe that we face, and one that wants to unseat us as the global power and replace us. And they recognize that they must have ultimately the superior military, the world's leading military. They must unseat the US in that role. And they are working very hard to do it. And they have the population and the economy now to get there. So there's lots of ways to react. Under Trump, there was a burgeoning alliance, and one would hope it would continue under Biden, but Biden is so owned by the Chinese, he's so compromised by China, with his son and his brother receiving tens of millions of dollars from the Chinese, that one has to assume there will be nothing but acquiescence to China under a Biden administration. But good news, the Japanese, for instance, just passed a $56 billion defense budget. It's their largest, I think, since the end of World War II. And they are coming out of their slumber. They recognize the threat that China is. There's a lot of enmity between China and Japan. Of course, Japan brutally occupied China for a decade in the 30s through the end of World War II. And we've talked about India and how India is a natural ally of the United States in thwarting China's ambitions. So one of the things I look forward to a second Trump administration was a more formal recognition of this growing alliance that probably comes to an end under Biden. Maybe we'll be pleasantly surprised, but we'll have to see what happens there.
Boy, we only have about a minute left. And Frank, as Ben was talking that, how China owns Biden, it reminded me of Hillary Clinton selling 20% of our uranium to Russia and how Russia was wanting to buy off Hillary. It's like unbelievable. They're willing to sell their soul for power, money. I don't get it.
One of the things that is the unspoken story of the past decade has been the belief by Democrats that the ascendancy of the Democrat Party is more important than the health and survival of the United States as a whole. We have seen a transfer of loyalty from the United States as a nation in terms of these activist Democrats to the Democratic Party. I mean, I honestly believe that in the case of people like Joe Biden, the deep staters, and Hillary Clinton, their personal political careers and the good of their party has taken ascendance over their loyalty and patriotism for the United States.
All right, we've got to stop there. We've got to take a time out. That's Frank Vernuccio. You can find him at usagovpolicy.com, Ben Brunson at benbrunson.com, amazon.com. We have to take a time out. We'll be back.
You're listening to Wehman, Brunson, and Vernuccio, Inside the News.